So thank you for the introduction. Again, I'm Elizabeth Kiester. I'm a assistant professor of sociology at Albright College.
Okay, I'm Joe Holokwo. I'm a rising junior at Albright College now, because sophomore year just ended.
What's your major?
Oh, I'm a computer science, political science major, too.
Okay, so how did this partnership come about? Okay, I had, back in, over a year ago, committed to teaching a first year seminar. Again, most of you are probably pretty familiar, something our incoming freshmen take. That's usually considered to be about 50% how to be a successful student, 50% content that students can practice reading, writing, and starting to build those entry-level skills. And I quickly realized that I didn't know anything about being an 18-year-old college student because I hadn't been one in a very, very long time. And at another conference, I heard somebody actually from Bryn Mawr talking about this students as partners pedagogy of really empowering students to help take control over their own education, to not only shape their own educational experience, but that of the students in the classroom. And I thought, that's perfect. I need an 18-year-old student to tell me how to design an FYS class. I had come up with the idea of doing a class on Star Wars, the sociology of Star Wars, something that might be enticing to at least 15 to 18 students, enough to fill my seats. And so I put out this flyer, and then my only two requirements were, do you love Star Wars, and have you taken a first year seminar at Albright? I hung this up and asked people to contact me. A bunch of people did contact me. I did some basic interviews, took some writing samples, and that's how Joe and I became partners. What was it about the class what was it about this project that interested you?
I mean, the biggest thing obviously was Star Wars, because I'm a huge Star Wars fan, so yeah, that's a big thing. But I was looking to do some research, and something that Albright offers is our creative research experience program, where a student and a faculty member can work together to create whatever they want to do in a research area. So we ended up looking into designing the course and fixing that.
Yeah, so I had to figure out a way to pay him to help me do this, and I thought, well, how am I going to convince my institution that this is a worthwhile project? Well, students as partners is something all institutions actually usually already participate in. It's just in research. And I had to convince them that this was research in pedagogy, and that it was worth funding, which we were able to do. So the class was called Star Wars, the Good, the Bad, and the Sociology. We worked on creating it over the summer of 2018. And it ran for the first time in over the fall of 2018. It was basically a way of using Star Wars to engage students in those initial, how do we learn to critically read and think and write about something, okay? And again, this was a variety of declared majors. So they weren't sociology majors. They were just, there was a whole host of them. Ironically, a lot of them were computer science majors. And then the other piece then that we practiced was the students as partners pedagogy, in which, in creating the class, I had to turn over a lot of my power to a student to say, what do you want to do? What should this look like? And he had, what was the part that how did you have to grow?
I mean, I didn't really know much about sociology at all, or a lot of the behind the scenes work of what professors did to create courses, because I was just going through on the sitting end and just listening and things like that. So it was very interesting to go through and figure out, how to design a curriculum, how to engage as a student. So not only to be the student, but now to project myself as a professor as well. So it was a very interesting turn of events to try and overcome.
Yeah, so through the students as partners pedagogy, really there's a big power shift for both the faculty member having to give up some of that power, and for the student having to learn how to feel comfortable challenging a person who's in a position of authority over them, right? So the Students as Partners pedagogy has been practiced in a variety of ways. Like I said, most universities have a student and a faculty partner on research. At Bryn Mawr, they're doing a lot of peer observation where the student partners sit in on the classes, and they're not there to take the class, they're there to tell the teacher how to do a better job of teaching the class, what works, what doesn't work. But the piece where a lot of people, where it hasn't been used a lot, is in curriculum design, turning over the curriculum to the students. So that's really what we thought, what do students know more than about how to be a student? Right? Because again, at the time he was a rising sophomore. He'd been in college for exactly 1 year when we embarked on this. Okay. So some of the benefits is that it allows for the breakdown of kind of traditional barriers between students and faculty, and not just for the partner, but it also then ends up sort of translating, and we'll show you some of our findings, how it translates to the students who are actually in the class, right? And ways in which it can increase student participation, confidence, and control over their own educational experience. And there were a variety of sort of mini Students as Partners activities that we also had the class participate in shaping a component of the course or their projects. So Joe, tell us a little bit about what we actually did.
So in the syllabus, because it was a first year seminar course, we wanted to have, as Dr. Kiester said earlier, a 50% trying to teach, like, this is how to be a student, this is how to come to college and kind of acclimatize to the environment and of Albright's campus, and then the other 50% was Star Wars, but and the course. But to start with the FYS side, we decided to get them familiar with our campus. So we had what was a campus scavenger hunt, where there was, in the first weekend, they were given a little booklet of different areas on campus. That way they would have to go to those areas on campus in small groups or by themselves to be able to better understand the campus and the different resources onto it. Going straight from that is the field trips and visits, because within the course itself, we allotted for time for either representatives of those different resources on campus to be able to come to the class, or for the class to go to those resources to be able to better understand how they can be used and what was important to them. So that way, if there was, for example, one is an academic learning center on campus to be able to apply for tutors and things like that, and also for like writing help. And one of them was to be able to have a field trip to there to better understand that resource. And then lastly, we wanted to touch on more of the liberal arts education itself. So a lot of the assignments during the first semester were based around kind of understanding what liberal arts are and how they can be important to the student.
And then on the Star Wars side?
Yeah, so then on the Star Wars side, this was more of the, I guess, the fun side for the students to be able to better take into it. And one of the big things that we did was our character arc project. So what we had was we had the students come together in small groups and look at 3 films throughout the entire Star Wars saga, and from those they were able to create a paper and a presentation on a character arc, looking through the sociological concepts that they learned throughout the semester. And this was very big for the students, because this also was where we kind of threw in a little bit more students as partners for them, because at the end of this project for them, they had a presentation where they actually presented to the that was open to the school for themselves to be able to kind of have that extra edge on presenting to the school and having a little bit more control over their education. And yeah, just throughout the course we had lots of different material readings, things like that, where we had some YouTube videos, some examples from little books and things like that, and then some literature on the subject as well.
Yeah, and it was great because I could just say, Joe, what do you want? What do you think students want to read? You help me figure this out. You know, is this too much? Is this not enough? And so he was very able to do that. And then the last piece was then we created a variety of different assessments so that we could try to figure out what the effect of his influence on the class really was. What was the experience of the students who were in there? And really we kind of came up with three key things. The first was that his presence was visible. One of the ways that we did this was I told them, but then over the summer we were thinking, they're not going to believe me. They're not going to believe that a student would assign that or create that writing assignment. So what we did was he created videos, like little video snippets, like tips and tricks, and I embedded them. Well, I would show them in class. We had about 10 over the course of the semester, and I would play the video. He would talk to them about a concept or an upcoming project or a study trick or tip, and just kind of remind them, hey, I'm here. I helped do this. And his presence was definitely noticed, and it was very much appreciated, right? So one student said, I believe that the co-created class under a student-faculty partnership was more beneficial. This affected my experience by giving a better understanding to the class. This was done with videos from Joe at the beginning of every chapter, also by a clear explanation on what kind of effort was required to do well in the class. So again, the students definitely provided this kind of feedback.
And then another student actually responded with something a lot similar. We had a lot of the more positive feedback, which we were thankful for. But I once said, I feel that this class was being co-created in partnership with a student, definitely aided in the explanation of the sociological aspect of the course. The terms were clear and understandable for the first year class that consisted of many different majors and levels of interest in sociology. And this actually brings us back to what we were talking about on the very first slide, which is the fact that I'm a computer science and political science major. Dr. Kiester is a sociology professor. I have never taken a sociology course in my lifetime, and I do plan to if I have room for the elective after having this experience. But at the time, I had very little knowledge of the subject. So to be able to go in and say like, oh, slow down, we need to make this where someone can understand it a little bit better, because we're talking about many different majors, many different backgrounds of students coming in to be able to better understand the subject matter. So they were able to thankfully see that pass through myself and through the students.
Yeah, one of my proudest moments is that he completely understands the importance of context in understanding things like race, class, and gender. So I was able to explain that to him so that I could explain it to the students. And now I hear him talk about it, and I'm like, the second thing we found was that students felt that Joe made the class more personable, right? So my experience in this class felt very familiar and welcoming, meaning that Joe knows what being a student is like, so he co-created the course with that in mind, making it simple, okay? So there was this at least impression that a faculty person couldn't do this on their own, but that he knew what students wanted and could convey that in a way that was more accessible than just having a faculty member do it, right?
Yeah, it appeared that because a student was behind the scenes, they were a lot more like willing to be like, oh, this assignment isn't just terrible. It's something that a student actually thought of and things like that. So it was something that led to a little bit, I guess, more of a comfortable experience for them going through. But another student said, I think it affected me in a good way because Joe sits in my seat every day and understands what it's like to be a student in today's time. This coming from the fact that just a year prior to this, or actually a couple months when we were creating the course, was I was sitting in a first year seminar of my own, and then during this time frame I was actually in a class of my own. So I was still actively being a student at our institution, so it was very clear and actually conveyed to the other students that I am in their footsteps, literally, kind of thing.
And I feel like it affected my experience because you got to feel the student part of the class, and also because I know Joe, I got help from him and got to ask him questions about the class. So one of the things that we didn't necessarily anticipate or expect was some of the pressure and the backlash on Joe himself. He was an RA, and some of these students were in his dorm or on his floor, and so he couldn't get away from them. And so that's something that has to be taken into consideration. He was definitely in a position of power over them, both as an RA and because he knew what the content was. I mean, he helped develop things like quizzes and exams and things like that. And so something to be mindful of is the impact that it has on the student. And luckily Joe is somebody who was able to kind of to handle that and to balance that. And then our last kind of major finding was that being in a co-created class made them feel prepared. It made them feel like they were ready to move on to their spring classes, and that the class had been successful in preparing them, right? So this was a class that assigned a lot of work between papers and other work, just like my English class. In my English class, not many people understood what was due and when. However, in this class, the structure was made so everyone could understand. Again, and it's hard to kind of necessarily tease this class apart from other classes. Obviously, they're comparing to this was an English 101 class, right, that an incoming freshman would also take. I am a heavy Moodle user. I use our LMS more than a lot of other people on campus. That could also be contributing to this. So again, something that we're aware of. We don't know. We can't. There's no perfect control for this class compared to even another FYS. But this was at least the perception of how the student felt the class prepared them.
And this was actually like one of my, I guess, most proud responses that we got from, because it was actually a successful first year seminar course, not just because, I can relate to the student and have fun, but I can actually know how to do college from now on. So another student actually said I had to do more intense group work for this course than any other course that I'm taking, which took me away from which for me took away how I completed assignments that were part of the entire group effort. Basically, what we wanted to do for the entire course was kind of give different levels of rigor and different types of assignments for students to be able to understand, like, this is how I can study for a midterm and take a test. This is how I can write this assignment. Here's group work. Everything that they're going to be experiencing throughout their entire 4 years or possibly experience, we wanted to be able to give them kind of a taster for. So to be able to have a difficult assignment that they were able to tackle in their first year, we felt was very successful.
So related to this, so the students, after they had to kind of present their character arc papers, this was we have a graduation requirement. You have to go to 16 experience events. We had them hold their own experience event in which they were the creators of the content of the experience event. Again, kind of taking control over what an experience event looks like. Again, I had to wrestle. I had to bend a lot of arms to convince the experience committee that this counted as an experience event, and here's why. And they say, well, that's not what I say. I know that's not what they normally look like. We're trying something different. Play with me for a minute. But so the students, the sense of accomplishment they got from doing those presentations in a public setting, dealing with public speaking and fear of public speaking, were some of their proudest moments. And then lastly, my least favorite part of the event was the nerves I got before it. I get really nervous, and I was super scared to present in front of many people. My favorite part of it was me overcoming my nerves and being proud of myself after it, right? So again, the variety of different things that we tried to expose them to as far as different learning techniques and different assessments was something that they appreciated. And we did that because, again, they're going to go to all these different faculty, and every faculty is its own country, and you got to learn to speak the language, and you got to learn the culture of that class. And so we tried to expose them to as many different things that they possibly could to be prepared for the different things. The Moodle thing was probably the hardest, because they would say to me, well, why don't the other professors put my grades on Moodle? I don't know. They should. No. So that was something, again, I had to say, well, there's these different ways, and here's how you have to do it differently, right? So for the most part, really, we found the students' pedagogy as a unique example of blending the experience of both the faculty member, the student partner, as well as the students who were in the class, and the positive experience they got from it. That this pedagogy does seem to work and apply to the curriculum design, and that interested parties should tap their institution's existing substantive research funds. When I heard about this program and we dived into the literature, all the programs are big institutional programs, and I thought, how am I going to pull this off at a non-institutional level? And that's where I had to kind of get creative and say, if I tap into these existing SAP kind of substantive research funds, it was a way for me to sort of pilot it. And now I've got some data, and try to see if I can get some more faculty on board. We'll be presenting this actually to the college next week to really see if we can get some more people on board.